Welcome to today's webinar. This is Erin, and I'm going to be with you as both your host and your presenter as we explore labels, lines, and multiplot inside of RoadEng. So today's agenda, as I said, focused all about labels, lines, and multiplot. We are going to be exploring these three different categories within RoadEng. Labels, we're going to explore the different types of labels, how you can control them, their formatting, their positioning. We'll be looking at lines, whether that is special types of lines that come in through things like section banding or display shading, and just different ways of working with them. And then finally, we'll wrap it up by exploring multiplot, understanding a little bit more about its structure, the different page types and pagination settings you can work with, and then a couple nuances, and I'll call those our sort of more page-specific items. So that's kind of our plan on a page. As a bit of housekeeping, just want to let everyone know today's goal is not to show you what line type to pick for your project. It's really about to just show you the tools and allow you to know how to leverage them, how to work with them, and what the sort of universe of possibilities is. So the presentation format is going to be, I'm going to say, a little bit more PowerPoint heavy than most of our typical webinars. If you've been with us before, I'm going to be talking a little bit about some content in the PowerPoint, and then we'll move into the software to see how that applies. So that's our format. If you have any questions, please type them into your GoToWebinar panel. And I should say, we have changed what the panel looks like. It's been updated. So yeah, explore it, figure out where your question section is. You can type them in at any time, and we'll tackle those at the end of the presentation. And then finally, if you happen to be one of those people watching this off of our YouTube channel in the future, feel free to drop a note in the comment section below. We're happy to answer it as well. Okay, let's get started. So our first topic is all about labels. So we're going to explore some different elements about them, starting with some basics. So labels inside of RoadEng, and I should say we're going to be working exclusively in the location module today. So this is not focusing on terrain. Labels are a two-part control system. So first off, in any given window, plan, profile, you need to first enable your labels. Think of that as almost like a master switch. And then from there, you can enable specific label types. And these, of course, are controlled by the different windows. So let's go into the software, and we're just going to take a look at this idea of this two-part control system. So on my screen here, we just have a really basic road design, nice and short, nice and simple. You can see kind of what we're working with here in 3D. We're going to put that window away because we're actually not coming back to it after this in the webinar. So now we have the plan view. And let's just take a look at that idea of a master switch. So to get to our labels, we go to Plan Options. And here we can enable the labels. This is our master switch. And if we press OK, nothing happened. We just simply turned that part on. But the second part of the switch is this idea that we then need to go press the plus and enable some type of label category. A real typical one is to have sort of some station labeling. So we can enable that here. I should mention this one is a specific type of label. We'll talk about that in a second in a bit more detail, but it's got a preset format, and here we can define its frequency. So press OK, and now those labels are displayed. So again, that was a two-part system. We first enabled the labels for the window, and then we actually enabled a label. So again, two-part control system. We can also control where the labels show, kind of their frequency. What part of our alignment is that label showing up on? And most of the labels inside of the plan and profile windows are tied to something called a report point. And that's a very specific defined point that could be, based off a certain station frequency. It could be based off of the site where an attribute occurs, like the beginning of a curve, the end of a curve, the presence of a culvert. There's lots of different report types, and we can tie labels to those reports. We can also add a label that's a floating label. And we're going to manually add those at a station or anywhere in our design, to be honest. They literally float in space. So there's kind of two ways that we control where labels show. Let's take a look at understanding a little bit more about adding a label to a report point type. So again, plan options. We're going to go into our labels here, and let's add a label at our begin curve and end curve. So these report points exist in the software already. There are begin curve and end curve points. And actually, I've got them denoted here with little squares. Let me just back up a second and zoom in. So I actually added some symbols onto our report points so you can see where they happen. And if we go in and we add those labels by turning them on, we're going to see that those labels occur at these report points. And the cool thing about when we attach labels to an alignment through report points, when we make updates to our alignment, those labels are following the changes in our alignments. They are dynamically connected. Okay, the next part of label basics is what content the label contains. So we looked at two examples already. We looked at the station labeling and we looked at the begin curve and curve labels. And they have predefined content because they're part of a default label class. And as we'll go into the software again in a moment, but there's quite a few of them, around 10 or so for both plan and profile windows that are default labels that you can just enable and control. But then there's another fun type of label called a user-defined label. And these ones are, again, tied to report points, but they're based on attributes and we can customize the type of content that's shown in them. So for example, and we'll go create this one here in a moment, but we can add different, say, culvert attributes and have that attached to our culvert insertion points. So they're really useful labels for, again, staying dynamically linked to your design, but for allowing you to control exactly and precisely what you want the label to show. So let's go and we'll take a look at now adding in a culvert description. And then don't worry, we're gonna explore what's going on here in a moment as well. So again, plan options, going into our labels dialog. So these user-defined labels, you'll see there's 4 categories of them at the bottom. They're all blank to start. And we just simply need to first off turn it on and then go into the options for it. So custom labels need a few things to make them work. First off, we need to tell it, the software, where do we want these labels to show up? What's our report point? What type? So here I'm just going to select all and turn them off because we obviously don't want culvert labels showing up everywhere. So here we'll scroll the list. I'd like, yes, at my culvert insertion points, I would like to show a custom user-defined label. And then we can go in and choose our attributes. So the attributes are those sort of different properties in the software and fields that, again, are all they're going to update with us. So if we change the length of the culvert, for example, this label that we're going to create is going to change. So here, let's select a couple culvert properties. We've got culvert diameter, culvert length, and let's get its inlet position. And I'm just double clicking to move them over to my selected list. So once you've got the attributes that you want to work with, I like to now press the edit button. And here we can also add text. And this text is going to show up in our label as well. And we can type anything we want here. Now we get to all watch me awkwardly type, hopefully not too many mistypes. Nothing nerve-wracking about doing a webinar when you don't do them too often from the host, the presentation side of things. Okay, so there's an example of what a custom label could look like. So here it's going to say culvert properties, and then all of these little cute things in brackets are those attributes that are going to update depending on the actual specific spot. So we're going to press OK. Maybe I'll change the name of it to Culvert Custom. Okay, so this is our custom culvert label. We can add some special formatting to it. We'll talk more about formatting in a few minutes, but now our custom label is showing up. And the cool thing is if we go and we add another culvert, let's say we add one at, I don't know, 460. We're going to get the properties for that culvert as well, showing up and being included in our labels. So custom labels or user-defined labels in their proper name, really useful for allowing you to communicate other stuff. And again, they're dynamic. If we were to delete that culvert, that label goes away. So really powerful tool that you can use to help communicate different elements of your design and keeping it dynamically linked. So the next topic in labels, and obviously I'm making a little bit of a mess by my culvert there with my labels, is really their position and their formatting. So each label at the class level has the ability to change the font, change the way that the label is displayed, change it whether it's on the left or the right, whether it's connected with a box or a line, or maybe perhaps it doesn't even have a leader. So we can control all of that for each different class of labels. But then we also have the ability to manually edit their position. And both of these are really, really powerful. So for example, if we wanted to have this lovely user-defined label, let's have it more offset from our alignment because it's clearly getting in the way of some of the other elements we have. So going into my labels, going back down to my custom culvert, and here I can now start to change some of its properties. Perhaps it's got a much longer leader. Perhaps we want to also change the font. And when we do this, it's going to change it for this entire class of labels. So if we had a few of them, they're all going to update like this. And I clearly didn't take it far enough. Let's go a bit further with that leader. Okay, lots of options. And then we get to, singular labels where I'm actually quite happy with my station labeling. But in this one particular instance, it's definitely a bit of a mess and it's not very clear. We've got overlapping begin curve, end curve labels. We've got a leader coming through our station label, and we have the ability to manually edit individual labels. So to get there, and maybe I'll just do that again, I right-clicked, I'm going to select Edit Label Tool. I click once on the label to turn it into manual edit mode. And then I can actually double click it and change any of the properties for this individual label. I can change its color. I can change its position. In this case, maybe just flipping it, this individual label to the left could make it a bit cleaner. Not entirely. Maybe we'll try adjusting its offset of the text. Okay, a little bit cleaner. And then you also have the ability, if you'd like to do it, you can just manually edit and move the label. So that label can come anywhere I'd like to when I'm in manual editing mode. And you can do that with any of the labels that we have in the software. The big catch is that when you manually edit labels and you go to make another change to a label, you're likely going to get this label reset dialog. And I feel like this is one of those that sometimes people just click and ignore it. So just to explain a little bit of what it does, if you get the label reset dialog, the yes button is going to take away all those lovely manual edits you've done to that class of labels. So in this case, we just edited our station report point. So if I press yes, that edit of switching it to the other side is going to go away. If I press no, it's going to keep that manual edit. And this is really helpful because if you want to change labels in a certain station range, you can do that as well. So perhaps you want to reset all the labels from station 0 to 100, but leave the rest of the alignment with the manual edits. So this dialog is really important, and if you get it, please don't gloss over it. Take a moment. Remember, yes, it's going to reset it. No, it's going to preserve those manual changes. Let's just take a look at that. So here, if I go back into my plan options, we'll do something in labels, pretend like we did something in labels, come out of here. It's now asking me if I want to reset my labels. And again, if I hit yes, This lovely change we've made here of moving my station labeling over to the left-hand side and getting it in a better spot is going to get reset back. If I hit no, this is going to keep it. So a really, really important dialog box. Okay, moving along. Floating labels. These are literally, as their name suggests, they float in space. They can be anywhere in your design and they are not dynamically linked to changes you make in your alignment. So floating labels, basically manual labels, and they're something that are really useful. You know, perhaps you're adding reviewers notes, perhaps you're adding notes as you're designing so you don't forget them. Maybe there's a note relative for the terrain or some feature. So floating labels, again, super useful. We're going to create it manually. They can exist in both the plan and the profile, and they can be changed very similar to how we just edited that other label by double clicking on the label while in edit mode. So let's go over here. We've got a little bit of an intersection or a junction. Maybe I just want to add a label to say to maintain the junction. Oh no, I've gotten an error. And this is because floating labels have to be enabled. Again, think about our software as needing almost like switches. So we need to be able to switch the display of floating labels on to be able to add one. So I'm going to hit OK. By the way, I did do that on purpose. Plan options, we're going to go into labels, and floating labels are a class of label. And with that, we can also control what they look like. So, you know, perhaps we wanted to have them in italic, different font, maybe slightly bigger, change their color, whatever we want to do. But this is the class of labels. So now whenever I go to create a floating label, this is going to be the default that I'm working with. And perhaps we want to have them inside of a box. So we're going to press OK. Again, oh, I've made a change in labels. I'm getting this dialog again. And I'm going to select no because I don't want to reset my label formatting. So here I was in label edit mode. And I'll just show you that again. Label edit mode. I'm just right clicking. And now I can add a floating label. And that is going to have the formatting that we set at the class level. And it literally floats in space. We can move floating labels anywhere we want. Like other labels, if we go back into editing mode, we can set it individually. We can give it its own color. We can change its font on the individual label as well. So that's a little bit about floating labels. So again, they are not connected to the alignment. If I made a change to my alignment, that label does not change. The rest of them are going to move and update as they're impacted, but that label stays the same. Okay, moving along. We've spent a lot of time talking about plan window labels. So now we're going to move over into the profile. And the profile has a very, very similar way of operating. Again, we're going to enable the labels at the window level, and then we're going to enable the individual labels to turn them on. The other piece we'll cover here under the profile, that's sort of a label, sort of a line, but this idea of the sub-window labels. So we can add some sub-windows below the profile to communicate and label extra information. Perhaps that's our center line elevation, perhaps it's our ground types. There's a lot of options for a display of additional information that can happen below your profile. And we'll take a look at that in this section as well. Okay, so we are leaving the plan window and we're going to head over into the profile window. So here's my profile, and just for a quick note, I am working with a 10 times exaggerated scale. And as you can see, we have no labels being shown in it. So again, to start to work with labels, we first have to turn them on, and then we have to select the different types of labels we'd like to show. So some typical ones that you often see is the begin curve end curve label and the grades. And as a reminder, we can't change the content of these default classes of labels, but we can change their label fonts and formatting, and we can also change the number of decimal places, for example, on grades that we want to work with. So here we've enabled two different types of labels. I'm going to leave their position as well as their format pretty much the same, but increasing our decimal places on our grades. And there you can see we have some labels being displayed. Similar to the plan view, we can edit labels. If I wanted to move, say, this begin curve end curve, we can move it. And of course, that was me clicking to the side. Again, if I click to the side in label edit mode, it thinks I want to add a floating label. And again, for floating labels, we're going to have them displayed if we want to add them. So the profile, works very, very similarly to the plan view. These labels are going to adjust automatically with alignment changes. And of course, you can manually edit them to reposition them for clarity, especially if you've got a lot of stuff happening in your design. So the other piece we're going to talk about here is this idea of sub windows. So in profile options, sub windows, we're going to press select. And here we can display this additional information below the profile. Maybe that's our ground layers that we have in our design. Maybe we want to include our curves or a template parameter, or maybe we want to go and create a custom label similar to what we did with attributes in the plan view. So here we select them. And then you can go in and configure some options, the height of the thing, just what you want to show. Available here in that menu option. We'll press OK. Oh, again, label resetting dialog. In this case, I do not like the change I made. So we're going to hit yes, and we fix that. And we can pull up the bottom part of our profile window to show the different sub windows that we included. So here we have our ground layers communicating what our sub horizons are. And again, it's just overburden up to about station 425, and then we get some hard pan over fractured rock until about 875, and then into some more overburden. And the cool thing about lines and labels, and I'm going into the line space now, I guess, if I go into profile options, I have an ability actually to display the line work for these ground types too, which I think is really useful for communicating what's happening in the profile. So lots of options for adding details to your profile view, whether it's through the banding or the sub windows below, labels on the profile. And again, all of this information, everything that we're showing is dynamically linked. So if we changed our sub horizons, this information down here is going to update. So if we change the station range that it's applicable to. The information is going to update. Okay, moving along into our next window, cross-section labels. And this is where we get an extra switch. So in cross-sections, we are sort of dealing with three switches now for labels. And this can feel like this is at one of those points of confusion sometimes, but they are important switches. So the first step for enabling cross-section labels is to turn it on at the window level. Again, same as plan, same as profile. But in templates and in cross-sections, we have different material surfaces. And to give you a little bit of extra control, we then allow you to have that second switch, this intermediate switch of being able to display labels by surface. So perhaps you want to display labels for just your subgrade. You can turn that on. And then the other nuance with cross-section labels is that they're not controlled by report points, because of course report points are linear, following the alignment linearly. In cross-sections, we're dealing with point codes. And point codes are those different parts of your cross-section, which we'll explain in a bit more detail. But it's for turning on labels specific to point codes. So let's go take a look now at cross sections. So again, switching windows here. Now I'm going over to the section view. Here's a simple cross section. So to enable labels in the section view, you're going to obviously right click, section options. I feel like I'm getting really repetitive at the section options and turning on labels bit, but it's important. Switch number one, labels. Now we're going to press the plus. So here I have three layers above subgrade, and then my subgrade material. So 4 surfaces. So I can display labels for an individual surface. Let's focus on this one. So surface 3, I'm going to press display labels. Then I have to select which point codes I would like to display the labels for. So I'm just going to select the whole list and unselect them all. And then we can select the point code that we want to display for. So in this case, I'm going to go my pavement top, left and right, and I want to show the labels, the slope labels, and the code labels. So let's just kind of unpack what's happening here. We have a list of the different point codes, and here we can control the specific types of labels. So these are like our label classes. We've got the name of the code, the slope, the elevation, the slope distance, the horizontal offset, and an ability to include a symbol. So here for just our pavement top left and right, we're going to show the label and we're going to show the slope. I'm going to press OK. So we've turned on 3 switches again, the surface, the window, and the point code. And now you can see here in our cross section, we have pavement top left, pavement top right, and the slope being displayed. Now the big question that often comes is, first off, how do you know what surface you're working in, and how do you know the point codes? And that's where hover tips are fantastic. So you can hover, and I'll just quickly just hatch my fill areas to make it a little bit more easier to see the surface. And again, to see that, I just went right click, hatch all fill areas. So here, if I hover on this surface here, you can see it tells me it's fill for surface 3, and that's included inside my hover tip. It also tells me some other interesting information about the elevation, the area, and I can do the same with the next surface, which is surface 2 in my cross section. And then we've got surface 1 down here. And then, of course, there is our subgrade surface below it. So we can hover at a point, at any point, and get point codes as well. So where I'm hovering right now, I can see that I've got PT1R. And that's the one we've displayed, and that's for our pavement top. And so this part about point codes and understanding it, if you attended one of our template webinars in the past, it's a great source of information to help learn a little bit more about these codes, where they come from, how they're being made, but very, very useful. Okay, so we have talked a little bit about displaying point code labels. We can also look at displaying different hatching, and I should have prepared an example for this, but it's really useful if, for example, if you've got a part of your template that's like a keyed in rock fill, you could actually change your hatching, and we'll just go and take a look at that. You could change your hatching to have a rock hatch to it, and we do that over here through line types. So I guess this is kind of my transition point to talking about lines, but we can control different hatching and different line types for these different cross-section surfaces. And here we've just updated that, and you can see it's now, I'm getting a different part to my cross-section. So you can use that to help visualize different materials, different surfaces as they're being used. Okay, now let's formally transition into the line part of our webinar. And staying in the section window, we'll take a look at cross-section banding. And this is, I'm going to say, a newer feature. I believe it came out in version 10. And really, cross-section banding allows us to add additional attributes, kind of similar to what we did with the sub windows and the profile, but different attributes for our section window. So we'll go and explore that. And again, this one's kind of a label, kind of a line, but really, really useful in communicating additional information. So here, just go to the section options. We're going to enable banding. And I should mention, see the status one here? This is controlling these fields down here. So you could customize that as well. But here, we're just going to go straight to banding. And these are the default bands that show up in the software. Of course, we can customize them, but I do like this one. So we're going to get our subgrade elevation. And we can include that. Press OK. And that is going to add banding. Now you might wonder, Where were those cool lines that connect it? So let's go and figure out how we add those. So we go back into banding, and here, these lines down here, these are the internal dividers. And if we press external dividers, that adds those as well. Now, I left the second one without customizing it. So it just says band 2. The first one, it came with my label. So you can control the names of the bands, and you need to type it in. So again, select band 2, give it a title, and now you can start to communicate additional information. And of course, these again are dynamically linked to your design. So as we cycle through different cross sections, those banding and the information displayed in them is updating. So really useful, again, for communicating elements of your design. Okay, possibly my favorite topic of the webinar. We're going to go back into the plan window now and talk a little bit about display shading. So display shading is a really cool visual, oh my goodness, why did I leave the PowerPoint? It's a cool visual tool that you can use to communicate additional information. Now this could be something like the visual gradient that's shown in the plan window example here on the right. And this is actually shading by cut depth. So in this slightly more topographically interesting example, I'm shading based on cut depth. You could also shade based on just cut and fill in general, whether you're in cut, whether you're in fill. You can shade based on code pairs, and we'll go through an example of that in a second. And you can also shade on other attributes. So it's a really powerful way, again, visual checking, communication of different properties about your design. And grades a really good example as well. So to get to display shading, again, plan options. This time we're going to enable shading. So it's got that master switch kind of like labels. So if you decide you want to enable it and check it out, once you've got it set up the way you want it to, you can just simply turn it on and off if you want to include it in your visuals. So enable shading, we're going to press the plus, and here we're going to start with the basic cut fill shading. So cut and fill is done by section zones. And we'll see a couple examples coming up that are done continuously. This one's done by section zones. We can control the thickness. Press OK, and now we have, along our alignment, it's showing us when we're in cut and when we're in fill. So that can be really useful. You may notice, though, there are gaps between it, and that's because this is being done based on report points. So if we were to increase the frequency of our report points, I'm just going to go here and change our auto interval point to be a bit more frequent. If you increase your report point frequency, that type of shading is going to be more continuous looking. But of course, this is a big cautionary note. Report points are a slippery slope for your computer performance. If you have a really long alignment and you increase your report point frequency to be too much, you obviously slow the program down. So if you haven't checked it out, we did a super awesome webinar on better understanding RoadEng, talked a little bit about report points a few weeks back up on our YouTube channel. Definitely worthy of a watch. Yeah, anyways, that's my cautionary note on report points. So let's go back into shading and try another example. I do really like shading based off of code pairs. So here I'll select code pairs. And when we say code pairs, we're talking about point codes. And let's go take a look at that pavement top left and pavement top right. So our PT1L, PT1R. So we'll select those. We can choose what color we want to shade with. And the cool thing about this is it's a continuous one. It's going to shade between those point codes. In this case, it's going to basically show us the drivable surface of our road. So a really cool one for including, and you can shade on any point codes. You could shade ditches, you can shade, you name it. If the point code exists, you can shade with it. You just need to define the 2 point codes it goes between. So ditch outside left, ditch inside right. I mean, make those both on the same side, and you can shade them. So a really cool visual aid. And of course, the last example I mentioned I was going to talk about was an attribute. You could do it off of grade. And when you're working with attributes, this AutoGen button is your friend. And what it's going to do is it's going to set up an automatically generated number of intervals, and it'll give you some cool, a choice of colors, and it'll do all the work of transitioning you. So let's go make it more fun. I'm gonna go from like pink to green, which makes no sense, but it looks fun. So let's just do it. And when this one though, it is important to note that it's going to show up based on the width that you have defined. So if I go back into shading here, I'm saying the width of this shading is only 2 millimeters. So if I want to make it a little bit more bold, or maybe I even want to offset it and go alongside my alignment, we can do that. But it's another, again, visual aid, can communicate grade, it can communicate cut depth, lots of other attributes available. And it's definitely, yeah, really useful when you're designing to have a good sense of what's happening in different parts and different aspects of your alignment. Okay, let's turn display shading off and we'll move to the next topic, which is just general line work in the plan window. And this applies to profile too. So through your plan window or profile window options, you've got the ability to control some of the line work. So L line, your center line, you can control what that looks like. And I know sometimes it feels really hard to know what it looks like because when you're designing, it's magenta. But in multi-plot, this is where you're going to see what that center line formatting looks like. We have the ability to control our road edges. So this is a very preset point code that we are allowing you to control. So again, we talk a lot about point codes. You can control them individually here in the template codes, what their line work is if you want to use them. But road edges is explicitly the road, like the RE point code that exists. You can also do slope stakes, clearing right of way, and control the line work for those. So let's go in, we can take a quick look at just one of those options before we go talk about multi-plot. So for example, if I wanted to change, we'll just go do the center line. If we wanted to change the center line, again, just change the line work, press update, and my center line has changed. And I'm going to use this as a great transition point to talk about multi-plot, because this is the spot where we basically will find out what that center line looks like because we don't have it active. So multi-plot, we'll just start here. We'll add a plan view. And you can see here, our center line is now a red solid line. Okay, almost missed a topic, which is screen layouts. So if you have gone through the energy of setting up your labels and your line work and you love it and you want to use it on another project, you can use a screen layout. And that screen layout is going to save your window positions, your line work, your symbology, and your labels, with the exception of floating labels. Obviously, we're not going to capture the text in them. So if you really like your screen layout, and this is, yes, your standards, you just go to the View tab and you press Save. Save this as a screen layout. And then if you like it on another project, you can just go up here and you can call that different layout. And here's another one I created. It's going to be horrendous, but I wanted to make it as visually different as I could. And here in this one, I just called some different line work. And it's brought that in for me. So again, screen layouts can be a really quick way to grab all that different formatting that you had created. Okay, so that is a little bit about screen layouts. And then kind of how do you put it all together is multi-plot. And multi-plot is our construction documentation tool. It's going to allow you to create those sort of beautiful output sheets for construction, those detailed engineering drawings. My favorite part about this tool is it is, again, like the labels, dynamically connected to your design. So if you change your plan window, your multi-plot has just updated. If you extend the length of your alignment, the cross sections will update. It's very, very flexible and very, very dynamic. But it has a bit of an interesting structure. So multi-plot kind of has 3 levels to it. At the top level, we call it our book. It's basically the wrapper. It's going to hold your chapters. So each chapter is essentially a different type of page. It could be a plan of a profile type. It could be a cross-section type. It could be just a title page type, whatever your chapter is. And then how many pages exist within that chapter is a function of your pagination settings. So that is a combination of how long is your alignment, what's the scale of the content on the page, and then of course the method of pagination you're going to select. And don't worry, we're going to go into pagination in a tiny bit more detail in the 5 minutes we somehow have left in the webinar. But the cool thing about multiplot, kind of like a screen layout, you can save these. So we can save a layout, a book layout, which is going to contain the layouts of all the chapters in it, and that's a BLT, so not just a delicious sandwich, it's a type of layout. And then we can do chapters as well and save individual chapter layouts. And so the goal here really with multiplot is, one, to help you produce documentation really efficiently, and then to let you reuse the work that you've done to set it up. Yeah, and let's just take a quick look at some of the different page types that you might want to include in your project. It could be that, again, classic plan over profile. Inside of it, we can include lots of data tables. Maybe it's a cross-section view, title page, just a general information page, or even perhaps sometimes folks like a blank page included in it. So with multiplot, all of these pages are, again, very customizable, but the one thing that stays fixed between all of them is the sizing. So when you select your page sizing, that is going to be the size of the entire book. Now we have folks that like to work with multiple page sizes, and in that case, you're going to create multiple books and control it that way. So let's go back into the software and do a little bit more exploration with multiplot. So again, to get to multiplot down here, I'm going to press the Activate Multiplot button. And multiplot has an entire ribbon of functions available to it. So we could manually add our plan and profile subviews, control those, set them up. We could add title blocks. We could make this thing, really beautiful. Those title blocks, I should say, are added through rectangles. So we could add a rectangle. Oh goodness, the typing today. We could control its font. We could control all these different elements to it. And if I really loved this layout that I've made, I could save it. And I could save this chapter type and use it again. Yeah, it's quite useful. You can, again, double click on it. You can control a scale. And with that, of course, you want to have matching horizontal and scales for both your plan and your profile. Otherwise, things get kind of messy. Okay, match it, and you'll see that the software is automatically adjusting the number of pages I have based on my scale. And that is because of the chapter pagination options. So here, I've just told it to use my plan and profile width. So again, a lot to unpack in multiplot. To be honest, we often do multiplot webinars and cover everything all at once. Yeah, that's a little bit about it. Now, moving into some of the other pieces that often get people hung up is more in the cross-section space. So with cross-sections, it's kind of similar to those user-defined labels we talked about. We need to select the point types of what we want the cross-sections to display. And one of the common mistakes that people have is not including culvert insertion points and wondering why they're not showing up in their cross-sections. So let's just go and take a look at that. So one of the resources you have available is if you wanted to bring in cross-sections or set up a page, you can use the web library here. That web library allows us access to different example templates that you can start with. So here in this typical cross-section page, I've got 6 up. We could change the layout of it. We could make it 4/2. And back in that layout options, we had the ability to select our point types. So right now, I'm only displaying my auto interval points at every 5 feet, and that seems way too often. Let's move that back to 20. So now I'm just displaying my cross sections every 20 feet, but I'm missing my culvert insertion points. So I'll check to enable that and press OK. And now I've got every 20 feet and I've got my culverts included. Another tip while we're in here, again, always check your pagination options. If you've got it as a fixed number of stations per page, that might be a problem. You're going to want to use this section, and that's going to allow it to just automatically think about how to best display it to fit all the point types that you've selected. Okay. I feel like I had another topic or two I wanted to mention. We talked a little bit about pagination. Again, the recommendation for cross-section, as we just went through, is to use section. The recommendation for plan profile is to use plan profile widths. And of course, if you'd like to have a bit of overlap between the pages, you absolutely can. Just include that there. And then the last topic, and fortunately my example is not great for it, but it's this idea of manually scrolling. So we can customize the way that, especially in the case of, say, a switchback, the way that your alignment is displayed by manually scrolling. And that means, basically, if I'll just go back here, I'll show you what it looks like. But if I press scroll, this page only, take off auto, I can now use shift arrow and control arrow to move my alignment. And so this is, I'm starting to press it on my keyboard and it's giving me this notice. Do I want to manually scroll? I'm going to say okay. And now I can move. Again, I'm pressing keys on my keyboard, shift and arrow up and down, control and arrow to rotate. I can adjust the position of this. And it's really important to note that the software is trying to remind you of some of your settings. So if you can see in the top corner up here, there's a little icon. I'll just zoom in to show it to you a bit more. So this icon is telling us that this view is manually scrolled. So if I now save this as my layout and I apply this on another project, I really want to be careful to look for manually scrolled views. Okay. We talked a little about that. We talked about that little icon. It's so helpful. And now, time for some questions and answers. I know we are over time, and this is a new GoToWebinar interface. Now I got to figure out where the questions are. Okay. Oh, good. Lots of great questions. Okay. Question number 1. Is there a way to put tables or labels to show the range of the shading gradation, like elevation range or slope range? That is a really, really great question. And for that, I actually did bring backup for live on the fly questions. So after your webinar, we do have our training manager, Matt, here with us today. And Matt, I don't know, would you like to talk a little bit about creating tables to show some of those attributes? And feel free to steal the screen.
Yeah, just a sec here. Sir. Here, and I will share my screen. Just bear with me while I get some things opened up.
Sweet. Well, maybe while you do that, I am going to do a recap of some of those very key tips that we talked about today. We talked a little bit about manual label edits. And to avoid seeing that reset dialog 1,000 times, highly recommend that they are best done after your design is finalized or near finalized. We talked a little bit about floating labels and how they are not dynamic. So if you are putting them adjacent to a feature of your alignment, that might change, just to be careful because they are not going to move with it. We talked a little about that label reset dialog and to be cautious, to actually think before you just dismiss it, because yes, wipes away all those manual edits you've made. And then we talked about hover tips. I think they're highly underutilized, and they're really important for helping you to identify what surface, point code, even elevations and other details. Hover tips exist everywhere inside of RoadEng, and certainly leverage them. And with that, I'm going to let Matt share.
All right. I'll try and answer the question. Yeah, so you can produce a table. So we've got the kind of context here. We can add in a data table. Now with that data table, we can configure what we'd like to see, and we could show the same attributes that you're showing elsewhere in the software. So in the data table, well, we can choose what type of information that we're reporting. So if it was related to curves, well, maybe horizontal curves, we're going to use our horizontal curves table. Vertical curves table, and then alignment, we could come in here and set that up. Now we can control how frequently we see our rows, so how frequent they show in terms of report points. And then we can change, well, what's being displayed in here, very similar to how we'd set up our labels. So if we were interested in, say, let's see. If we wanted to see our final stake slope, well, we could report that in here. So we can do that, and then we can see, okay, we've got a fill slope of 33%, and then we're switching to a cut slope of 1:1. So as, yeah, kind of similar to other things, it's pretty flexible, just a matter of kind of diving in, getting it set up to show what you'd like to show. So hopefully that answers your question.
Awesome. And let's do one more. Matt, perhaps I can leave this one with you as well. And then the rest of them are, oh my goodness, there's so many questions, and some of them are very detailed and specific. So we'll probably try to answer you guys directly. But the last question in the cross-section window, can we label the dimensions? For example, widths and thickness.
Yeah, so let's see here. And I'll preface it that with the, I really do like the banding functionality to show that. It's not exactly the answer to the question that you're looking at, but it becomes very easy to show, well, things like horizontal offsets, which will give you your horizontal offset relative to centerline for your various point codes. And then you could do vertical differences between surfaces as well. So it becomes really nice to do that with banding, and then you don't have to worry about the clutter of things right on your drawing. Now, beyond that, it'll depend on kind of how you want to have this set up. Oops, wrong button. We'll come in here and let's turn on our labels here, and actually I should make sure I'm turning everything off first. And we'll come in here and we'll turn on, so instead of saying show our slope labels, maybe we wanted to see just the horizontal offset labels. And we'll hit OK, and then we've got the offset being displayed. So there's a few different kind of tools in the toolbox for showing offsets, distances, etc. Yeah, finding what you'd like, the best way you'd like to show that information might just take a little bit of fiddling around to find, find what looks best for your particular project. But then once you do, you can save it as part of your screen layout, save it as your book layout, etc., and then you're set. Easy to populate that and use it over and over again.
Awesome. Okay, guys, we are almost 10 minutes overtime, so we're going to wrap up there. Lots of questions in the chat. We will get to you guys. Give us a day or so to reply to all of them. There's some very detailed ones in that list. But I hope you had fun, and I hope you enjoyed having a different voice throughout the webinar. I certainly enjoyed preparing for this one, and yeah, diving a little bit deeper into some of the labels, lines, functionality that you can leverage in RoadEng. We will be publishing a updated calendar of webinars starting in January. Oh my goodness, I can't believe we're doing that for 2026. Those are coming out in the next couple of days. And we look forward to seeing you guys all again at another webinar soon. So yeah, thank you so much and have a great day, everybody. Thanks again for being here.